All right, welcome back to the Rhymes That Resonate podcast, where we explore the soundtrack of extraordinary lives. Today, I'm joined by my wonderful guest, Tommy Schnell, um, husband, father, ultramarathoner, former guitarist, former firefighter, current BJJ competitor, and just all around interesting guy. And so I want to just take a moment to thank you for taking a weekend off. I know you're kind of under the weather, so if it wasn't for that, you'd probably be out competing. Uh, so I just want to thank you for your time and just give you an opportunity to tell the people about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for having me on. You gave a pretty good intro. Yeah, I've been runner pretty much my whole life. Into jiu-jitsu since I don't know, past 3, 4 years, 3.5 years. Um, yeah, and then as far as music has always been a huge part of my life. Listened to it growing up, but then started playing guitar when I was 16. Um, and downsized my guitar collection, but I still got a pretty big collection. I even built a guitar from scratch before. So
Oh wow.
um, yeah, anyways, music and jujitsu and running and family, that's pretty much what my life is about.
No, that's really awesome. And I'd love to, really dive into, for one, those three hobbies and how they relate to, different aspects of your being. But first, I got to ask you about your name. Where does Schnell come from?
Yeah, Schnell actually means fast in German. So it's kind of nice having that last name if I'm racing, but
Yeah, living up
yeah.
to it. I see you, every weekend, you're posting of whatever the latest competition out the way is. And you're putting the medals away, and it's just really impressive to be able to maintain a high level of, that cardio fitness, but also the jujitsu fitness, because they're really not the same. They may be interconnected, but they're not the same. And so to work so hard and be a high level competitor in both of those aspects is just, really awesome. And while maintaining a family too, like, dang, how do you do it?
Yeah. Well, the for running in jiu-jitsu, you're right. It's two different systems, and a lot of times it's like I gotta I gotta listen to my body. That's how
Mhm.
I do it, and also for the family side, listen to my wife. She's usually the one leading the way and says like, "All right, you can't go to class tonight. You need to be home." I'm like, all right, that's good. I need somebody to tame me.
Yeah, a little bit of
So
help you recognize when those limits are being reached, and
yes,
maybe sometimes not listening to yourself. It's always good to hear it from somebody else you trust,
for sure. Yeah.
which I think is a great segue into the song Watermelon. Um, I interpreted a few things from Watermelon, but I really like to hear Watermelon by Noah Gunderson. Like to hear a little bit of your interpretation of that song and how it plays into your life.
Yeah. I think that song, so first off, like Noah Gunderson, he's that's the like you asked, for a couple of my favorite songs, but that's a hard thing to break down. But as far as a favorite musician, favorite singer-songwriter, like Noah Gunderson, right away, he's
Mm,
my favorite. Like lyrically, I don't know, he just does it different than most. And that song talks about, I think, fully embracing like moments and
mm,
experiences and the ups and the downs and like just everything that life has to offer. And then at the same time, like you're always yearning for something. And like for this song, it reminds me of my wife, it's the
mhm.
last line talking about, this hole in my chest, trying to fill it with you. Like that's it right there. Like it's perfect, that song, in that regard. Um,
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I actually interpreted the same song or the same, kind of line of thinking, especially with the last like few lines that he delivers. He's, there's like you said, the ups, the downs, the good memories, all these different things, but like all of that is fleeting compared to the permanence of that significant other that you trust who's there and that kind of constant in life, which is, in your case, your wife.
yeah.
Um, And so that relates to how you train and what you train. And could you tell me a little bit more about like that relationship and um, just the way that compels you or propels you in your competition?
Yeah. So I think like as far as training goes, like with I think always getting after it and just always trying to not really like I don't like to think I don't like to plan too far in the future. I like to
Hmm.
just like, okay, we got 3 months ahead. We're gonna start working now, and that way we can live in these moments like right now,
Mm.
and try not to get overwhelmed by I don't know the doing running, doing jiu-jitsu.
Hmm.
If I'm doing both those things and I start planning too far out, then I don't know, it becomes overwhelming. So
Yeah.
um, yeah. Anyways,
No,
I
that's go ahead. Go
and
ahead.
as far as like that song, I'll listen to that song quite a bit when I'm training, like when I'm
Hmm.
running. I listen to Noah Gunderson quite a bit. Like just I go running out in the desert and
Hmm.
um, man, it's there's nothing out there. So being able to listen to songs like that and just get in the Noah Gunderson talks about a lot about like life and the meanings of everything and failures and all that stuff and being able to listen to that just out in the middle of the desert with no one
Hmm.
around and it's kind of a cool experience.
I could only imagine, with it's just, like man in the world at that point.
Yeah.
Um, that's pretty, that's a pretty cool experience. And I hope that, people get an opportunity to, go and do that. Cause, I run on the concrete when I do run. And as a fellow BJJ practitioner, what I can say as far as the ups and the downs and how it relates to training and some of the interpretations I got from that song is it really is, some days it could be, waking up and not feeling great. It could be waking up and feeling amazing. It could be, looking throughout the day whenever your practices are and saying, like, man, I'm not looking forward to it today or whatnot. Um, or, like, man, I'm really getting after it. And then when you get there, it's almost like it could flip. Right. And it's maybe some days you're just completely on and you're in that flow state, but some days maybe it pulls you out of it. And some days maybe you hit a funk while you're in there and you say, man, this was not a great day of training. But you always have your wife to come home to or your children to come home to. And like you said, not getting too bogged down, not only what's in front, but what's in the rear as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really, really, apt song for the training that you put yourself through. And you don't do just light runs. You like, tell us a little bit about some of your runs.
Yeah. No, I just a lot of my runs are longer runs and they're trail runs. I like the trail runs because um, I I need to have an advantage in my head, and my advantage is I'm just gonna be tougher than you. So,
Okay.
you know, you can't be that tough if you're running on a track for 400
Hmm.
meters. It's just whoever's faster, right?
Hmm.
So if you're on a trail, so anyways, that's where all my runs are. They're out in the desert, and they're usually up mountains or on two tracks where UTVs ride down and
Hmm.
stuff. And um, yeah, I mean, those are about my runs right now. And I got a little dog who's my running buddy, so he's definitely enjoying all those runs
What
too.
kind
It's
of
just
dog?
me and him. He's a Vizsla. They're
Mm.
like a pointer dog essentially.
Okay, I'm
So
not familiar, but I will look that breed of dog up after this call. And
yeah,
that that's what's been really cool about doing this podcast is meeting people and learning different aspects of their lives and learning a lot. Right? I've never heard of Noah Gunderson, but instantly, listening to that song, I was like, okay, this it's an exposure to something new, but I'm hearing something that still connects with me.
yeah,
And so I appreciate you bringing that to me. Um, but now somebody who I am a little bit more familiar with, Prof.
yeah,
Prof, and the second song you submitted was High Price Shoes. Did I get that right?
yeah, yeah,
High Price Shoes by Prof. Man, Prof is such a serious, like serious lyricist, and that
Yeah.
song is so unserious. I need to know, for one, how'd you come across it? How did that become like one of your picks? And how does that relate to you, your training, and your life?
Yeah. So it's funny because Prof and Noah Gunderson, I found them both on YouTube, um, kind of the same way, just looking up music, but they're two different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that song, I don't, I think I was already, yeah, that song, once I find an artist, I just follow them on Spotify. So anytime new music drops, I just have it. But found that there, and that was the first song that I walked out to on uh, Fight to Win. So
Oh shoot, that's cool.
yeah, but that as far as this song goes, relating to like training and stuff like that, like anytime I go compete in jiu-jitsu or running, um, it's at least a 3 hour drive. Um,
Mm,
just because I live in a small town and yeah, we got to go travel to go where everyone else is. So usually what I like to do is listen to music that's all about the ego,
mm,
um, just going over there, and I like to pump myself up as I'm getting there, but then like during the competition, like once I get to the venue or the race or wherever I'm competing, I don't listen to any music.
mm-hmm,
Just because I like to let all that external noise go, and it's just me, and then I'm ready to go. Like I feel like I'm much more there. When I
mm-hmm,
was in high school for like running like track races and cross country races, I would listen to music right up to the race, and I would always be super tense, super like anxious, and I mean, for my regional meet that I was supposed to win in cross country, I was puking
mm,
beforehand, and I think the music just would amp me up. Like I was listening to same type of music, like um, I was listening to Eminem and like Fort Minor and all that stuff, like
mm-hmm.
all that stuff. It was 2011-ish, and anyways, so now I'll listen to Prof and like Norman San and Spark Master Tape. Like those are like pretty much the three people I listen to on the drives up to the competition. But
Mm. You
yeah,
you mentioned that you listen to songs that are all about the ego, and I are you listening to songs that like pump up the ego or maybe break down and try to keep you level, or what are you
so
getting from those songs?
yeah, definitely pumping up the ego. I like to inflate myself up a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
that's also why I let go of them before the
Mm-hmm.
competition. So like, a typical jiu-jitsu competition day, 3 hour drive over there, and then usually my son's competing at like 9 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already there at like 8 in the morning. So from 5 to 8, I was listening to Prof, and then I don't compete till 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So by that time, it's already all out of my system. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, I
Mm-hmm.
I I think that's when I get the most nervous is like driving over to the competition, just because you got nothing to think about but
Yeah,
that while you're driving. So
just you and
that's
your
my
thoughts.
that's my little pacifier, I guess,
Okay.
for me while I'm traveling.
Well,
So
it's interesting, right? Because you mentioned, I think, really, in with both songs, a sense of presence, right? Like not looking
yeah,
too far ahead, not looking too far behind, whatnot, and just being in the moment. And you said, once you're there, all that external noise gets shut off, and you're locked in essentially.
yep.
Um, and what is presence to you, and what does that do for you?
Um, I mean, for me, presence is hard to it's hard to be in the present moment. Like it's something that I'm
Hmm.
always trying to be more aware of. And I mean, it's so easy to be distracted. Like, I mean, phones are everywhere and they're just constantly sucking attention away. And
Hmm.
um, and then there's just always a need from somebody or something, whether it's jobs or family or dogs, like,
Mm-hmm.
um, so when you do find, I mean, I think that's why I love competing so much, is
Hmm.
you have no choice but to be present, um, in that moment. And
Hmm.
if you're not present in that moment, then that's when, I mean, you'll be beat by somebody who is present,
Mm-hmm.
because you can tell that right away. If I mean, you've competed before and you've done well competing before. Um, I if I shake hands with someone at the beginning of a match, and I and I feel that they're worried about like what I'm gonna do,
Mm-hmm.
they're they're not present. They're just thinking about me. They're thinking about like what
Mm.
else is happening. And I usually can do whatever I want, but then, I shake hands and it's like they're meeting that same energy that I hope I'm giving off. Like, okay, well, now we're gonna go through this together. And those matches are so freaking cool when we both
Wow.
don't really care like what's going on. It's just us. And
Mm-hmm.
you can't hear anything. It's just you're not worried about, but I mean, you don't know what day it is. You don't know, it's just that right there. And
Wow.
and running's the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's why I never do any hard competitions or hard workouts, hard running workouts, or races with music, because
Hmm.
the moment you let some external thought get in your head, that's when your foot comes off the gas pedal a little bit. You look at like these guys who are running, world record marathon pace. They're running so freaking fast, and they have
Mm-hmm.
to be so locked in mentally that, I mean, it's probably harder mentally than it is physically to run that
Mm-hmm.
fast. Just because there's no room for mistakes. If they go out 1 second too fast on a 400-meter split when they're running a marathon, that could bite them in the butt. So they
Mm-hmm.
have to be, they're talking, half a second space you have the entire race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyways, I think
Wow.
that's what presence is.
No, that's so it's really intriguing, right? Because you mentioned, you know, so in times I've talked about intentionality and presence and whatnot, but never have I considered presence on the other person's behalf too, right? It's usually self-centered, self-focused on like the individual I'm speaking to, or my own experience. Um, but when you mentioned competing against somebody else, and like you're physically competing, right? You're trying to best somebody, right?
Hmm.
Who's equally skilled or not, and the fact of the matter is when you're both in that moment, in that flow, uh it's a whole different kind of competition, and it's almost more enjoyable regardless of the outcome, right?
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
you're matching energy, and I think that's so important, is matching energy. And that also goes back to just like you were saying about the music that you're listening to before, during, after, whatnot, a competition. Those vibrations, they mean something. Our bodies absorb that. And you've it seems like you've adjusted your approach to competing based on your body's reaction to those vibrations, and it seems like it's worked out really well for you.
Yeah. That's so far with jiu-jitsu, I've never listened to music before competition, but it's funny that, you asked me to be on this podcast because I was just thinking about the other day. I was like, man, I should really try just blasting music like right before competing, seeing how I feel. But, I just have this gut feeling that it's gonna make me too amped up, too
Hmm.
anxious, too, you know, when I compete, a lot of people say that I look bored, because I like
Hmm.
to try to stay like super relaxed, and
Yes.
it doesn't matter what's going on. Like, I just want to be relaxed. And I learned that from running. Like,
Hmm.
the more you fight it, the worse it's going to get. So it's just like, okay, just relax, take a deep breath. We'll work out of whatever situation we're in, good or
Hmm.
bad. We'll get through it. Yeah.
It's incredible you bring that up, because I've lost in gi, I've lost a couple of matches, competitions, right? And first off, uh, don't change anything. You're winning a lot. Like, stay on the path. But my first competition, I listened to music, up until my first match, and then after my first match, and really, really tense. Now, I recognized it, but I didn't necessarily correlate the music piece to it. I was really, really tense, and I have a playlist called Drive,
Uh-huh.
and it's for all things, right? It's a general purpose playlist, but it's like mostly like, you know, take the top off of things type of energy. And so when I got on the mat, I was really tense. And first competition, I won the first match, and then the second match, I was so hyped up on what I wanted to do that I didn't think about what I needed to do, and I wasn't just being in the moment. And I don't know if the music had anything to do with it. I don't know, right? I'm not gonna retrospect, or what is it? I'm not gonna try to tell the story in hindsight or not.
Yeah.
Um, but I did lose that match, and I thought about it after, and it was like it was because I was thinking about what I wanted to do versus just being there, being present. And so for the remainder up until now, one of my biggest pieces that I focus on is just staying calm, staying in the moment, and being present in that situation. And it's been the same thing, right? Like it's my wife looks at me and she's like, "You look like you don't even want to be here." And it's like, well,
Yeah.
I absolutely do. I wouldn't have paid the $100 to get on the mat if I didn't want to. But I think that's just an excellent takeaway is how we approach music when we're doing various things, and how that may or may not affect our ability in the thing that we're doing.
For
And I
sure.
just appreciate that. And wanting to really touch on your third song too.
Yeah.
Your third song, Oceans, by the John, help me out.
John Butler.
John Butler
It's
Trio.
so is by the I think it's well that's his band, the John Butler Trio. But
Okay.
so the cool thing about this song is it's just him. It's just one
Mm-hmm.
guitar, you know. And um, man, this song it's my song that I use to reflect.
Mm,
So like this morning, I was like, you know what? It doesn't rain very often where I'm at, and it was raining this morning, so everyone in the house was asleep. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go grab coffee for me and the wife, donuts for the kids, and so I went cruising around town in the rain and put that song on. And man, the journey it takes you on, like there hasn't been a song that just makes me feel kind of yeah, if like it makes you feel like I got done with the run. Like it just
mm-hmm.
you feel it in your chest and the ups and the downs, and then when you know that it's just one person, one
Mm-hmm.
instrument making all that sound, it's kind of a cool experience.
It's so you nailed it, right? It's an experience. It really is. And for those who don't know about this song, Oceans by John Butler, it is over 10 minutes long. And the way I can the way I wrote it down when I was listening to it. First off, there's no rhymes, right? So rhymes that resonate. It's just the name of the podcast, right? But there's no lyrics in it at all, and I think that's a really, really interesting submission, right? Because first off, none of the songs that you submitted I heard before, right? So it was definitely a window into your life and the way you kind of outside of what we see on Instagram, what I see on Instagram. And so I appreciate you sharing that, off rip. But the song itself, again, it's acoustic, it's one guy, and it has so many different like um tempo changes. It has so many different like ups and downs and like crescendos and things of that nature. And it felt like running. It felt it felt like a trail run. I've done a few trail runs, and like if I could put a soundtrack to it, it would be
Yeah.
that. But really also it felt like a Gaelic smile, right? Like it felt like a cultural smile. And I just want to know, like, how did you come across that song? Like how did you get introduced to that kind of music?
So it's kind of funny that both John Butler and Noah Gunderson, I found them because they had dreads, and I used to have dreads,
Oh, okay.
uh, like down to here,
Right on, right
and
on.
I was like, dang, these guys play guitar and they have dreads, they're freaking cool, and
Hmm.
so that's honestly how I found both of them. But then me and a buddy of mine, we played guitar all the time, and we were really into a bunch of the just instrumental stuff for acoustic guitars, and we were trying to figure out how to play all that fancy stuff. We were both never good enough to play it really good, but we attempted it and stuff. And anyway, so that was a song that we were trying to figure out one time, but that's how I stumbled upon that song. And man, yeah, like that song, I listened to it. You know, me and my wife and family, we travel a lot throughout the year.
Hmm.
We have family in Wisconsin, and like this last year, we went over to to California for our anniversary. We drove down the coast and all that stuff, and um, so music is on the whole drive all the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
I usually throw the song at least once, just to, and then when that song's on, it's just so easy to just reflect about how
Hmm.
life is going. And that song, like you said, there's ups and downs and tempo changes, and you know, you could almost start fitting in pieces of your life with all those tempo changes. Like, oh
Oh
man,
wow.
this is kind of like a downtime, or this is dang, this is getting exciting. This is, you know, we're really doing it right now, you know, or whatever, you know. And,
Hmm.
so yeah, I think that song's kind of special in that sense.
Wow, there's a micro and a macrocosm to that song, and I'll say like it was incredibly meditative.
Yeah.
Listening to it, and like every few minutes I was like, I kind of like snap back, like, okay, wait, I'm listening to the song, I'm trying to like pull things out of it, and I'd find myself kind of entranced in it. And I think the same could be said for both running and jujitsu, and like just listening to that kind of a song and just thinking about life, whatnot, and maybe pulling some learnings out. But I think self-reflection and self-awareness are tools that are underutilized. And so being able to have a song that kind of like, I don't want to say forces it, but it definitely encourages it, facilitates that kind of
Yeah.
thought, right? Because I'm like trying to take notes. I'm sitting there trying, like I'm actively trying to take notes, and I'm just kind of thinking like, oh wow, that this relates to, and I'm thinking about my first half marathon. I'm not a runner. I tell people I'm an emotional runner, right? Like, like I don't physically run, but I have to here and there. And so I I pull up to it's a 3 hour drive, very similar to your experience, right? 3 hour drive up the coast of Washington State. And I'm looking for the path, right? Like, where are they marking off the run route?
Uh-huh.
And I finally pull up to like the coast of a beach, whatnot. And I'm still looking around, and I see the little arch, and I'm like, okay, well, let me go over there and see what's going on. And I grab my little piece, my little bib, and it says Deception Trail half marathon. And I kind of just sat there and looked at it for a minute while I was in the car after driving 3 hours, and then I realized, oh, this is a trail run. And like I've never run a half marathon. I've never ran a half marathon before. Never ran a trail, and I went back to that place listening to that song, which was the first time I had to do the switchbacks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god, the pace slows down. And then like when I go downhill, I'm like, oh, this is great, and I'm thinking I'm doing really well, and I'm like maybe 3 miles in, not realizing that there's a whole, you know, like I don't, what is another 6 miles to go.
Yeah.
um and it was a wild experience. What was another 10 miles, right? But yeah, it
Yeah.
was a wild
13.1.
yeah, I don't have any math in public, right? But but it was a wild experience. But I remember at one point, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this, forget it. My earbuds died, and I'm like, this is it, it's all grit from here. And I'm like crawling up the side of a mountain, and there's like a little girl, like she's like 12 years old in Vans. She's kind of like jogs past me, like,
Yeah.
and that was a down moment, right? Like I was
Yeah.
up and then I was down. And it's really interesting because the same thing happens on the mats. Sometimes you're in a roll, and you're feeling really good, and then sometimes you're wrapped up like a pretzel, and you're like, well, I could either tap here or I can figure a way out. And
Yeah.
that's really, I think, a message in life is, we can give up here, we can give up on the run, we can give up on the mats, or we can keep going and persevere. And again, like that's something that I got from that song in 10 minutes. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that with me.
Well, and that song, like you said, like it, I don't know. I have a hard time sitting down and like meditating, but like
Hmm.
that song, I imagine that's what it feels like to meditate. Like
Hmm.
it just cues it. Like, you know, like for me at least. Um, and I don't know, unless you hate music, like that song is, I think it's pretty like universal. Like, you know,
Hmm.
most people could just listen to that, and if they had the patience to listen to it for 11 minutes, like someone could pull something away from that one. I get it for like Prof or even the Noah Gunnarsson song. Like you have to like that type of stuff if you
Hmm.
want to listen to that. But like Oceans, I don't see how you not like that song. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, look, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing all that you shared with us, including the music, which I will make sure to post in the notes of the video. But before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to share with any of the viewers or myself before we part?
Um, no, just thanks for having me on, and yeah, it's great to finally talk to you in person. We've been Instagram friends for a little bit, and
Yeah.
yeah, this is a cool experience.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome, and it's been really awesome just watching you and your journey, right? Like I don't even recall exactly how we connected. It may have been like one of those like Instagram, like follow whatever. And for whatever reason, you've been one of the folks who I've been most connected with, especially around jujitsu. Similar time on the mats as far as BJJ stands, and it's been just so incredible watching you just like every week drop something new, drop some heater when it comes to, knocking out a half marathon or a 10K, and then turning around and, you know, placing medaling in a jiu-jitsu competition, right? Like that's really inspirational. And I hope that anybody who watches this, who's, maybe a father, maybe struggling with, balancing work, life, mental health, whatever the case may be, like to just take a look at your page and see that it's possible, right? Because you are out there, and it's I'm not going to say seamless, right? Nobody, I don't know what that looks like for you, right? But you make it look like it's just a part of what you do. It's not something you do, it's what you do. And I think that's a really inspirational thing that people can take from it. So again, I just appreciate you sharing with me and sharing with the world some of your life.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thank
Trying to
you.
take my back, but just the boss, so I'll never fall. No way in hell you can take my back. Fall on my side, never lie on my back. Till the game